I was not exactly a member of Creta's Order of Five Pillars, but bless my soul, I was not prepared for what I found at the Place Royale on Dandavella. Imagine a recreation complex the size of an entire city and with as many functionaries as local government, all devoted only to maintaining a citywide party that lasts 24 hours per standard day. You could easily get lost inside of Danvilla. I did within the first 5 minutes, but what the hell of a fine time I had trying, and not too hard, to get out. In the Danton Quarter, I found a reenactment of an ancient gladiatorial game. Sword and trident armed warriors were pitted against all manner of beasts, over 100 in all hacking and flailing about, while thousands of drunken citizens from a score of inner-sphere planets cheered them on. In the Cabaret de Gomorrah Prime, I saw things you can only hear about in stories. You know, the kind you buy in black paper bags in the usual part of town. By the way, if you ever go to the Gomorrah Cabaret, stay awake long enough to see Christina and her pet python. The things that snake does will redefine your concept of reality forever. Stay away from the Canopian glowweed, though. You'll enjoy it well enough, but in the morning you'll have a hard time remembering your name. Over at Mercedes Falls, you can find mermaids, real, live, biologically engineered, half-human, half-fish people. If you're wondering whether it's possible for mermaids to mate with normal folk, the answer is yes. Sometimes when the little woman isn't around, I'll tell you how it's done. And if you think that's something, wait until you see the Centaur chorus line down at Minsky's on Raventher Boulevard, not to mention the audience participation at happy hour after each performance. Don't be alarmed if you've seen some stuffy, green-clad capellan with a girl over his shoulder, or a Lyran priestess walking about in nothing more than her ceremonial medallions. In Danvella, there are no capellans, no Lyrans, no Davions, no Merricks or Caridans, just people discovering a million ways to be themselves, whatever that happens to be at the moment. It's paradise, my friend, paradise. From Justin Gordani, a letter to Kodo Pumbleton, Canopus Correspondence, Adult Attitude Press, Canopus 2547. So, the option has come up on a few times about, are there can, are there Canopan cat girls? Can they exist? Do they exist? Well, let's just get down and dirty at the nutshell. Keep in mind that, in theory, they do exist, although they are not listed in canon. So we're going down that rabbit hole. But there are listed in canon, because that came straight out of the Periphery handbook, the early version of mer people and centaurs. That's right, horse/people things. And these are implied specifically in the story. And you take that with a pound of salt or a gallon of mech lubricant, however you choose to go, that whether it's mainline accepted or not, is more to do with your particular style and preference for flavor in your version of BattleTech, rather than the standard run-of-the-mill family-friendly game system that's catered to and championed by the various game companies that produce this stuff, including the current rendition of Catalyst Game Labs. So, that said, sure, there are definitely the possibility for having any kind of exotic existence, short of the aliens. And technically, aliens, while not accepted mainstream canon, there's just enough of hints laying in there to basically suggest that maybe, possibly, there are. So if we just look at the very basic concept of what is a cat girl, what is a anamorphic, animatistic furry, right? Well, from the basic concept, the superficial, well, absolutely. Why wouldn't generations of quote cosplayers in the future still create their versions of something of this nature? A little bit of glue on fur, some glue on some little teeth extensions, the little ears and tails you just wear superficially, the outfits, the illusions, prosthetics, artificial constructs that you attach to yourself. holographic technology in some aspects, potentially. All this can create the illusion of a, quote, cat girl. So you betcha, absolutely there's a possibility. And quite ideally, sure, because people are people, and girls will be girls, and people love cats, etc., etc. And all the other, because it could be a fox girl, there could be a horsey girl, there could be, you name it, right? You just, all you got to do is Google anime or hentai, and you'll get plenty of it. So the possibilities are there. This leads us, of course, to the next evolution of possibility, and that would be the cybernetic and extensive body modifications of people. People willingly and sometimes unwillingly undergo all kinds of modifications. In our current world, body tattoos, body implants, studying, uh, you know, what they call that, where they purposely scar themselves, plastic surgery, all accepted, depending on your particular circle and your particular revenue, just how much you want to go. There are examples in the modern era today of people who have gone under extensive body modifications to look like snakes, to have a third breast, to have horns or vestigial horns or nubs and knobs and nut things stuck all over them. Quite plausible. And so when you look at the BattleTech technology level, keep in mind, as of 2547, and during the golden age of the Starling, cybernetic technology, biomedical advancements, very, very far more progressed than anything we can really envision at the moment. And all you have to go is to look at the biotechnology and or cybernetic technology that allows the replacement of limbs, arms, legs, eyeballs, all kinds of other components. You can almost become a cyborg in BattleTech. And in some aspects, in-game lore, they do exist, and some of it's intentional and on purpose. So the possibility that you could be physically altered to resemble something exotic is, well, yeah, it's a common sense sort of thing. I mean, it is the sort of thing that the bored public, wealthy individuals would extend into, and when you're not spending most of your time fighting and fighting for your life or fighting for your ideals or whatever. And combat and war in BattleTech is almost ceaseless. It's almost non-existent. In the current version, the 31, 50, 80 age we're at the moment, there is so much going on, so much war and conflict and disruption of normal things that you might see less of this. But in very tight circles and very selective circles and very wealthy circles, the very idea that this stuff can exist continues. It's just like suggesting that let me see if I can find it, because I know I picked up one, and I meant to tag that in here too. And of course, I don't think I've got it. Or did I put that somewhere else? That's the problem with having too many damn folders. It's a possibility that I've stuck them in the wrong folder. There is Ginni D, and if I think about it, I'll put a link to the website that refers to this, is a YouTube influencer. She really is big into BattleTech, Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, and fantasy. Yeah, here we go. She has created a Centaur prosthetic. There you go. Here's Ginni D. And she basically straps this on. It's got some crude animatronics in it that's very basic, that allows the leg and the legs to move a little bit. She also has one that has a tail that will twitch and move. So she has a devilish or a succubus costume, or something along that nature, with the devil tail that moves. I mean, so that just goes to show you that on a superficial level, on a prosthetic, on the basic idea level, the possibilities for this sort of thing is not only reasonable, it's acceptable and doable. So yeah, we're talking with the possibility of taking Ginni D's very innovative concept here for her costume, and extend that to 500 years from now with modern medical and technical expertise and cybernetics and body modification, everything being enhanced by 500 years. The real possibility that somebody can create a robotic Centaur body that you step into and wear as a piece that's very functional for whatever purpose you want to use it for, is very viable and very possible. It's just, yes, it is something that can and possibly would happen. And you marry that with the concept of the Magistracy of Canopus, especially in its earliest years. Now, the view on the Magistracy has altered and changed subtly and blatantly in many ways over the decades. They have become less hedonistic. It's toned down far more than what they were implicating at the very early stages of BattleTech. And there's good reasons for that in real world sensibilities and wokeness and moral, whatever you want to take it. So they wanted to not so much play it or distance themselves completely from the possibility, just do a wink and a nod and then step off to something completely different because, hey, we don't want to be rocking a boat. But they left it in there for, they didn't retcon it completely out. It's still there. So at the height of the Starlink, the height of the technology, the possibilities exist that any of this stuff can occur. So you could literally have physically altered people to look like cat girls with working tails, working ears. Exactly. Absolutely. And you have the means. So if you have the means to do it, and there's the will to do it, and then if you marry all that together with the attitude and the moral standings, the I don't want to say lax morals because that's not fair. It's the different view on the world in general and one's place in it that the Magistracy promotes for majority of its existence, even on the sublime. Then sure, why not? Why not have entire groups of people who just want to look like a centaur and they want to go through life as a centaur because it's their thing, and they just feel that there's a reason for it, and why not? So cat girls absolutely can possibly go to the rook, which brings us to the deeper end of the rabbit hole. True genetic manipulation and organic engineering. All you got to do is, and we know it exists in neo-canon in BattleTech as part of the gene case, as the very foundation of the clans themselves. So the depth of that well you want to dig is up to you as the player for your particular game and for your players, but the mechanics are there, the flavor is there, the lore exists thanks to FanPro, FASA, WizKids, and Catalyst. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but once again, even the official statements, when few and far in between on topics along these lines, are that it's up to the players to what they want to design and to have in their version of BattleTech. In a one way, you can look from this from the perspective of the multi-universe. Every player, every game master who's ever created their version of something means it's just different from the other. So if you pick your favorite game system, I'm going to pick on Traveler, right? So Traveler's world and universe is pretty distinctive. It's pretty interesting, but it's not everything, and it's not nothing. And what I mean by that is Traveler is almost a clone of space opera, and vice versa. Later renditions would be, Star Wars, Star Trek. All of them fall in that same sci-fi, space-going kind of genre, but each one has its own take, its own diversion, its own way of doing things and dealing with things. Then within Traveler itself, 10 different storytellers can create 10 different versions of their universe and traveler, and they will not be exactly identical to the next. They might use the same basics, the same mechanics, the same concepts of how things should function, etc. So in this aspect, we're still talking the true genetic manipulation in organics, right? I mean, clan eugenics, I keep coming back to the eugenics program because at the end of the day, we are looking at the very development of altering human DNA through careful pairing of DNA to create the next generation of the best warrior. In reality, the genetic program is in part, it's at the heart of a neo-religion for the clans and for all true-born clan members. The reality is that that's just the initial step. The initial step is to take the best performing individuals from the last generation and create the next generation from them. And then they put them through a very stringent, almost psychotic process of winnowing, of a process of eliminating through competition, through constant trials, trial and error. You either succeed and you move on, or you fail and you move to a different caste. So at the end of the day, we start out with 25 would-be squalling babies fresh out of their iron wombs with the best traits of this DNA strand and this blood name and this blood name, and then we're going to basically clone them all. So they're all basically offsprings. Now, grant you, they're not actual clones, that they're all offspring of a particular mixture of DNA. And then we're going to pit them against each other. We're going to put them against various trials and expectations. We're going to put many, many obstacles in front of them to see who cracks, see who perseveres, who has the damn determination, whatever the desired traits of the individual clan and the clan's engineering, the people who want this trait to be progressed. They either achieve it or they don't. So we end up with 20, we start out with 25 and usually end up with less than 5. 2, 3, 1 out of 25 is not uncommon. But that's not through genetics. That's just the end results of a really long process that began with genetics. But we understand that the possibility because of the hint at the gene case. And this is something that, once again, in my own game system, Interstellar Frontiers, one of the premises of the 4 cornerstones of my game's premise is that at some point in our near future, mankind develops faster than light travel. That's number 1. Number 2, we develop this means to extend our life multiple generations. So the average human in my future game system potentially could live to be 400 or 500 years old. And that's because of the advances of medicine and genetic manipulation. A sidebar of all this is the number 3 building block. That third building block is the very real plausibility that humanity can't help itself but from playing God. All we have to do, and I look in my argument when I come up with the concept 15 years ago, is that if you look at modern era, especially 20 years ago, it was very common to see designer dogs as an example. So these are pets. These are dog breeds that by nature would not exist. They do not exist without human assistance. They wouldn't survive naturally. They would not have evolved to the traits that they have if it weren't for many generations and many individuals who want that, to breed it into that, to get those traits. Selection process. So the possibility that humans would do that to ourselves, the only reason we don't do things like, we're not keen on the idea of test tube babies or iron womb babies today. And this is where BattleTech's original writers and designers got the idea for the clans. Come on, hello. You don't have to go back to the cloning of sheep and various animals and see the ideas, the actual original test tube babies, which succeeded. They were artificially inseminated in a jar, in a lab basically, and then later they were embedded into a female host who then took them to term. They didn't actually completely come to term in a canister, but that was because of moral implications, not because the possibility existed that we could do that technology, because we proved we can do that with animals. So if you can prove that and you can do that with animals, you can damn well do that with human beings. But then it's a moral thing. Do we want that? Are we going to accept that as a society? In the modern BattleTech universe, as of 3028 or 3025 and then later, cybernetics are either accepted, ignored, or vehemently opposed. There are elements within the Free Worlds League, for example, are very against the idea of cybernetic replacements. It is inherent to them as a society, or elements of their society, where in other societies it's just considered a thing. And if you're lucky and you're wealthy enough and you've got a good enough backers, and you can get your arm replaced and it's functional as good as the one you had or better, then sure. Now, that's generally still a moral thing. So we're talking about a society that's accepted the idea of advanced cybernetic technology advanced by our modern standards, mind you. Then the downside, of course, is, or the moral boundary line in some of that is, when do we find it acceptable to purposely replace things? So if you know that you can get cybernetic eyes that are far superior to your natural eyes, say you need to wear glasses and then no amount of corrective surgery is going to fix that, why not just replace your eyes with something that can let you see in the low light, see at night, see in the dark, have infrared, have all the other possibilities? And the technology exists that can create it and support it, and it's something that's not going to be rejected by your system 99% of the time. Well, we're back to moral standards, moral standing, the society's morals and mores and issues that decide what and where and how we're going to be able to do something like this. So when we look at the real possibility of the fact that it does exist, from a fixing the warrior so the warrior can continue to fight mindset that the clans use, one of the things that make the clans so, quote, alien and non-human to the normal human morals is those morals. We want to go back down that rabbit hole for just a second on that, because let's even go back a little deeper down that. And this is definitely one of those caveats where this isn't for kiddies. So if you're easily squeamish or you're offended, kick rocks. Get off my damn channel. I didn't ask for you to come in here. So right off the bat, the clan's trueborn system has absolutely no qualms about allowing an entire generation of basically genetic sib-kid clones from screwing around with each other. The only thing that keeps them from becoming a thing is because they're chemically prevented from procreation. So they have no problems with an entire generation, or 25 siblings, basically sharing beds, exploring and doing the things that kids do, and doing with each other, and in doing it in such a manner. And then they're more back to the age thing too. They have no qualms about that because it's accepted in canon, in novels, that their trainers, their falconers, have no problems bringing some of these to their bedrooms for copulation. It's not a thing. It's not a problem. It's only a thing and a problem in our society today because our society deems it to be a problem. And 100 years from now or 200 years from now, what's acceptable isn't going to be acceptable. We see the same, we're struggling. It's a nonstop struggle with it now. All I got to go is talk about same-sex marriage. There's a whole slew of people out there that are morally adverse to it. Personally, I don't give a damn who you love and who you don't love and what you do behind your doors. It's none of my business. I don't want to know. As long as you ain't waving it around in my face and expecting me to, I don't know, jump on your bandwagon, we're good. Right? I mean, it's just like a racial thing. I'm not racist. I hate everybody. I'm scared of most everybody. I have been screwed over and taken advantage of and abused by more white American males than I have anything in my lifetime. So I'm just saying, I know from personal experience what I have to cope and deal with. And that's my rabbit hole that I have to, go through and deal with. So when we talk about moral standings and moral issues and things like this in the future, 3150 or 3190 or 3250 or whatever's up coming down the road, well, then we have to look at what the game writers and designers are A, allowed to get away with, B, allowed to insinuate, and C, nobody gives a shit about. Because there's a lot of this that's not in canon. It's not in the mechanics. It's not in the game books because nobody cared to put it there. Nobody talks about race as a racial issue. People's problems with other people in BattleTech is about what house do you belong to, not about what race you originated from, exception of maybe the racial issues of being a clanner or not being a clanner. And for the most part, they really don't. It's about trueborn versus freeborn. I mean, and you talk about pure, complete racist. Every true-born clanner in the world is a damn racist in a lot of ways, and by every aspect, exactly what it is. So when we talk to the genetic manipulation side of things, we go back down the path that we were at, and we're looking at the possibilities of, the cat girls existing. Well, clan technology envisioned clan aerospace pilots who definitely have distinct non-human looking attributes, and clan elementals. I mean, the massive, you're huge. And it's not just a matter, if you look at certain types of physical, I want to use the term deformally loosely because it's a slippery slope, but there are some conditions that humans, a very, very tiny percentage of humans can get, like gigantism, for example, that creates, Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant, by every definition, is a bloody elemental. Maybe he's not as fit as he could have been, but imagine if he'd have followed a very strict regime of bodybuilding and diet, just how much of a massive, monstrous individual he would have looked. He was already a big, huge dude, scary dude, but he could have been an even more scary dude had he been gone down. And I've seen some pro wrestlers that fit that bill. So when you look at those possibilities, when the first inner sphere people encountered these people, well, really they thought they were freaking aliens using technology that was gobs ahead of anything they were used to. Truth is, we now know clan technology, for the most part, is not that advanced. It's not. It's advanced as of 3025's inner sphere degraded technology base, but not at the height of the Star League when the damn Star League army left, even after decades of nonstop civil war and the reunification war before that. So the technology for bioengineering, genetic engineering, exists in great possible exists. The chance of it existing is extremely plausible. So when you look at that over time, the possibility of genetically altering the physical characteristics of a human being to become an elemental or to become a aerospace engineer, an aerospace pilot, an aero pilot, also leads to the darker possibility of the gene case existing in its extreme forms. And the odds are really good that within the closed, almost negligent scientist case system that the clans favor, you set up the possibility for some extreme exploration of engineering and science and development that would be considered horrific in the eyes of most normal human beings, and in a lot of aspects even within the clans themselves. Anything that diverted from the pure warrior breed mindset was stepped on whenever they got aware of it. But how much did the clan leadership ignore? How much of it were they oblivious to? They didn't care to know, because we're clans, we don't do things like this. It's unheard of, it's unconscionable, it's unthinkable. But, well, what does that got to do with anything when it comes to the same kind of egotistical, maniacal, frickin' mindset that the majority of the clan purebloods are? All right, so whether scientists case, they're not going to push the boundaries. There ain't going to be some Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein inside the clans. Hell, I propose that there were many of them. Many of them. So who knows? I absolutely have no problem accepting gene case as a possibility. I also accept the very vague concept that the game designers have put it out, saying perhaps it exists, perhaps it does not. What do you want? Meanwhile, even in the gene case, you read the section on the gene case. Go look at my video. I did a video on gene case. That the real plausible idea that they do exist and that they've continued to develop down those lanes because they've split off themselves. So they've been created, entire warrior genomes or would-be soldier, super soldier projects that went south or exceeded beyond their wildest dreams or whatever. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So the idea that we can do this for entertainment purposes, well, the clans would be abhorred to that. Oh, that's just a waste of effort, time, resources, and unclan-like. But we're not talking the clans here. We're talking the Magistracy of Canopus and the possibility that in a hedonistic society that has advanced science and advanced medical technology and knowledge, could they have done all this stuff? Well, damn straight they could. Absolutely 100%. And as the story says, even though it's going to be hearsay or a third-party rendition, a story within a story of a tale that this may or may not existed, the fact of it is the canon supports it, the lore supports it. The idea is acceptable in that particular neck of the inner sphere. Now, when we take that right back to the conclusion, toward the end of this, I'm wrapping this down, right? The possibility is that the modern science, modern healthcare, modern biomedicine, in canon, it says repeatedly that the Magistracy of Canopus, out of all the houses of the inner sphere and the periphery, outside of the clans, the Magistracy of Canopus has the most advanced biomedical system in place. Their schools suck. They're on the lower end of education system for a lot compared to some of the other houses. But when it comes to the medical part, the medicine part, the doctor part, the pharmaceutical part, they're still at the top of the game. They are superior to even the best houses in the inner sphere. Matter of fact, it's said in canon that it's not uncommon for, House Davion or House Steiner to hire doctors from Canopus, from the Magistracy. And we know that one of the two ways that the Magistracy generates additional revenue is that one is their traveling circuses, i.e. pleasure ships that go around making money, and others would be their version of Hope International or Doctors Beyond Borders. So they also have medical ships, drop ships outfitted with medical technology and their advanced pharmaceuticals and top-notch doctors that travel around, and probably for a nice tidy fee. So if you're wealthy enough, there's a little bit of a parallel there from Dune. If you're a wealthy enough family, who are you going to get your doctor from? Dr. Suit going to come from where? Yeah, you want the best you can afford. You're going to hire somebody on long-term contract from Canopus, because that's just the way it's going to work. And if you're a wealthy individual with lots of resources, why not? So we're back to that full circle. Absolutely, cat girls can and probably do exist in the BattleTech universe. So, you don't think so? You have a disagreement with me? You want to come back around full circle and tell me that I'm full of whatever? You know what? You're welcome to do it. That's all part of the fun and games of what we do here. Going on, my friends, this is Rick, and hey, if you like the channel, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell your buddies, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell anybody else that's in the gaming industry or gaming fandom that says, hey, this is a channel worth checking out, right? Till next time, I hope you guys have yourself